Yes, guys, welcome back to another episode of the 11 Yank Show. We have our usual panel here today to discuss this last window. Filippo Silva, which some of you may have heard of him. He's a small-time YouTuber slowly rising the ranks in the American soccer world. We have Meg Swanek, who's with us last time and who is notoriously a world traveler within CONCACAF qualifying stadiums. And then Marcus O'Malley. Justin Moran was on vacation, and Marcus O'Malley, who's been doing great work in the soccer landscape for years now. I'm excited to have you here, Marcus. Welcome.
Appreciate it. Thanks, man. Glad to be on.
So, guys, we do this after every window. We sort of sit down and we try to reflect and look back at the window away from like immediately after the game where emotions are high. And we try to look objectively at what happened, what was good, what was bad, what we can take away, and where we can go. And usually what we start with is we grade the window between a A+ and F-. Where do we give the team, where do we put the team, this window? Do you want to start with Tack?
Okay, first, do you want to disclose how much I paid you to do that intro?
Well, you and Rocco.
Oh, he paid a lot more. He can afford more. But so again, the whole rating is kind of tough because each one has a different perspective. Like I can give a B, in my opinion, can be the same as you giving a C, and we have the same view. I just gave a B because that's how it is. But so if I'm going to do like from 1 to 10, and then I'll switch to letters, if we get 5 points for the Mexico game and 5 points for Jamaica out of one, like half and half, for Mexico, I give us a 5 out of 5, right? We outplayed Mexico. The first half wasn't perfect, but the second half was very good. It's Mexico, a very strong team. We got the 2-0, which is perfect, clean sheet, 5 out of 5. Now, Jamaica was back to the Burhalter roller coaster ride, right? We get that high, let's go back down. So I can't give us a terrible rating for this camp. It wasn't good, especially because of the Jamaica game. And like one can even argue we should have lost at the end, of course. I'm going to give us a C+, B-. I'll give a B- because of the Mexico game. I think we deserve more credit to the team. I'll give us a B-.
All right. Meg.
Muted.
I think you're muted there.
Yeah, there's some Jamaican music playing in the background, so I'll keep myself muted when it's not on me. But for my grade, I'm going to go with a B. And that's because personally, I would give the Mexico game an A. I think that's one of the strongest performances I've ever seen from the U.S. men's national team. And the Jamaica game gets a C. So averaging out the two, I'm giving the window a B. I think, the Jamaica game, and we'll get into it, I think we were, especially in that second half, lucky to get out of there with even a point, really, really close there. And so I think there's some issues with consistency with our performances away in particular, some inconsistency in specific areas of the field as well. But I think there's positives to the Jamaica game too, and certain players were consistent there. And I think I would actually give Gregg credit for the lineup he put out. So it's not all bad for me for the Jamaica game. But yeah, Mexico gets an A, Jamaica gets a C, and so the window gets a B.
All right. Marcus.
Yeah, I'll keep climbing the ladder. I went B+. Same exact thought as Meg. The Mexico game, I thought, was the best performance, even of the 3 wins. Just the way that we dominated the midfield. I thought we could have won by more than 2-0. But that was incredible. Again, with the lineup for me in Jamaica, I thought Gregg made the right lineup call. Now that there's questions, and we'll talk about that in a bit about not having depth there. But of who he brought, I thought that was the best 11. That was who I would have played. Certainly could have lost that game. Certainly could have won that game. There's some opportunities with Brendan Aronson early on, and some opportunities there that I felt like we could have also won that game. It was a wonder strike from Jamaica, but I go B+ because he's making better. Of course, the Mexico game was incredible. So I'll give him a B+ for the window.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you guys on the B. I think that's a fair point. We can discuss the nuances of it later. 2-0 at home. And for me, it wasn't just like that we got the lineup right or that we beat Mexico, because we'd beat Mexico in the past, but it almost felt lucky, right? We felt like in the summer, in the Gold Cup, and in the Nations League, we got dominated and frankly out-tacticked, especially in the Nations League final. And we kind of, our big time players carried us through. But really, that Mexico game, and as somebody who's been critical of Gregg, I really want to give him props for the pressing scheme that he set up, because it worked to a charm. It worked to a, and I was concerned with that pressing scheme that, you know, they were going to play through us. And the moments they did, and we almost conceded that way. But Gregg made the right adjustments, I think, to the pressing scheme at halftime that allowed it to be more compact, and we got a deserved win. So it wasn't just that I think he got the lineup right against Mexico, but that he got his tactics right. And we can't always say that about Gregg. So when he does get it, you know, I want to give him the props for that. And it's interesting that, you know, after that game, some of the notorious mainstream media people were like, if you can't compliment Gregg now, it's like everybody was complimenting Gregg for that, right? And or the whole like notion of, oh, you know, he proved you wrong. It's like, actually, Gregg did exactly what the fan base has been asking for, and shocker, it worked. So it was just interesting to watch like the storylines after a game, and you know, the emotions that we're all riding on. So it was fun. But yeah, B is definitely, yeah. Go ahead, Tack. You have something
No, I was just gonna say it's just a move that very often media members used just to divide the fan base, essentially, because it was a day where we were all celebrating and agreeing and happy that Gregg did the right thing. As they love to portray that we cheer against Gregg, everyone was celebrating when Gregg did that. We're like, that's what we want. If Gregg's gonna do that, and we were all cheering because not only he did it, because we could have been very much wrong, and Gregg could have been wrong, and we could have lost to Mexico that lineup, and then all of a sudden we would start questioning, okay, maybe these aren't the guys. But it worked. Everyone was united with it. And then obviously some members of the media are just going to go, let me go back and divide everyone and say, put out a tweet which is not true because everyone was happy about it, and just get everyone to start calling each other toxic again and Gregg out and all that. So
yeah. I think if he had put out the lineup that we wanted, that all the, like, I would say the majority of the fan base wanted at this point, and we had gotten thrashed by Mexico and these guys couldn't hang, and it was like, then they certainly, I think, would have the right to go back and say, well, these are the guys you wanted. Gregg proved you wrong there. But you know, that really wasn't the case. Any other like quick thoughts before we jump into the episode, Marcus or Meg?
No, I mean, I just kind of second what Filippo said. I think I put out a thread of like two stories, right? Like two facts. You know, it's like we beat Mexico, is the best we'd ever done. This is what we've been asking for. You know, it was a big win. We're at par for through 7 games, you know, and kind of like just, you know, it's a great win, but we're 1 point, you know, separating first and fourth at that point. Now 2. Yeah. But it's very tight, and so to celebrate a single victory at home, which, you know, to that crowd is expected, right? Like win at home, draw or steal points on the road. From that mentality, I call it par. It was a great game, great moment for US, but from the window and from World Cup qualifying, we're at par in my eyes.
Yeah.
I would echo the same sentiments. I would echo the same sentiments. I mean, I think there's a lot to be excited about, and we'll get into this now with our takeaways, but I think there's definitely a lot to think about and month gap before our next game as well. So I'm ready to dive in, and hopefully I think I'm lagging a little bit, so hopefully you guys can still catch me.
No worries. Let's, we want to start positive as much as possible, right, on the show. And I think if everybody goes around and just talks about maybe, one positive takeaway from the window. I mean, the starting lineups, we've talked about that. Is there anything else that you look at this window and you can go, that's a positive takeaway? Marcus, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned the lineups. I think for me, he hasn't gone back to the old guard. And I think it was 3 starters that were not from the Gold Cup or the Nations League final with Pepe, Richards, and then I don't think Busio was in. So seeing him at least exploring some new faces, it felt like very early in World Cup qualifying, he was leaning on like, I won with these guys. These are the guys that are going to take me there. I think we're starting to see, a couple old guard phased out and him be a little bit more exploratory. So I'll take that as a positive.
Yeah, for sure. Tack?
Yeah, I'll go. There's a few, but going with one right away is it goes back down to the lineups, right? Even when things weren't going right, let's say Jamaica, Gregg did not trust, besides one of them, right? He did put Areola in, but he didn't trust his favorites as he used to, right? He used to use Leggett to come in to try to change the game. It wouldn't work. Roldan, he didn't really rely on these guys, and it wasn't perfect. Yes, he put Areola also because it goes back to the roster selection. He had no other wingers on the bench because that's who he brought. So that was an issue. And maybe Brendan looked gassed out, which he kind of did at one point, and that was the only winger he had essentially. So I think it is a positive that Gregg, when things weren't going well, he didn't think his favorites would have been the ones to change the game, right? It means we might not see some of them at the next roster. Well, sorry, not the next roster. I mean January. Next roster, we'll see probably all of them in
Oh
December.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
But
gonna be 11.
In January, it seems like the era of some of his favorites might be coming to an end. And I don't know if this was Gregg's plan. He was maybe filtering it out slowly. Some people claim it's that. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Or maybe Gregg is just like, all right, time to do the best I can here. It's not working with them. The Panama game, like Leggett got 0 minutes after the Panama game. That has to be said,
Yeah.
right? Roldan hasn't played anymore either, I believe. So
No.
there's that. But I think that was a positive. It shows maybe some maturing from Gregg or maybe some thread on the right direction. That's a positive.
So I just want to address something you said, Tack, about that was maybe the plan. And I've seen this claim that Gregg has quote unquote planned this all along. I'm going to push back a little. I don't think he did plan that. I really think that Gregg believes in those guys, or at least did for probably too long. And even if he did plan that, it still cost us 5 points because
I don't believe it. I was
no,
just mentioning one of the common excuses. I think what's happening is after the Panama game, essentially, he just saw that he can't rely on the guys that he wanted to. He really wanted them to succeed. And honestly, so did we want everyone to succeed. But he wanted to succeed more than the national team, I guess, at one point, and it didn't go that way. But that was one of the narratives that was out there.
right, for sure. And I'm just saying that, like, if that, even if it's true that he planned it, that cost us 3 points in Panama, and it cost us 2 points at home to Canada. Right, the Leggett Acosta midfield, the dual playing as dual eights, is what we did in Panama, and it's what we did at home against Canada, and that's 5 points dropped. Right, so imagine where we could be now if we could be sitting pretty ready to qualify if he hadn't held on to those guys for so long. But Meg, what is your takeaway?
So I'd agree with what's been said so far. And, Filippo, look at you making Gregg your positive of the window. I mean, I think giving that credit where credit is due, I'd agree with that. It does seem like he's evolved. For me, I would say that a positive of this window, and it's a bit related, is that this team seems to be really finding a rhythm together. Certain players in particular on the field are really getting where each other are at. You're getting an identity together as well. I think especially in the Mexico game, you can see a bit of a glimpse for how we want to be playing as a team and the style of play that we've been wanting from this team. Happening on the field, I think, in this window. And Gregg was asked about whether or not we have a core group. We're starting to see who those core players that can't be taken off the field or will be in the starting 11 at a World Cup would be. And he said, in theory, which is interesting. And I think that's something to think about too, like players who aren't here, like John Brooks or Gio with an injury, not here. I think he references them, or Christian Pulisic just coming back. I think obviously he's the number one no-brainer in the roster, but it's interesting to hear from him that he says there's a core group in theory, but in practice you have all these players who are really, whether it's Brendan Aronson or Musa or Weah, like when we have the full roster healthy and back in camp, you do wonder what's going to happen to these players, or Walker Zimmerman, who was one of the best players this window. I think that what we have as a positive is we're getting 11 on that core group, but I think we have the full squad ready, given the performances from players like Walker Zimmerman or Brendan Aronson.
Pete, one thing I just found out that Jamaican Wi-Fi is worse than their coach. I think we can confirm that.
Yeah, you were.
How much of that came through?
We got some good points out of that. We got some good ones. I think that the point you made about Gregg Berhalter's core group will be very interesting. And I think 2022, if people thought Twitter discussions were cray-cray, you know, this last year, I think in the lead up to the World Cup, the discussion about who should and who shouldn't be in the roster is going to be a very interesting one. And I love it, honestly. I mean, a good soccer culture has strong opinions about who should play for their national team. That's true anywhere in the world. And so I'm looking forward to the, you know, the discussions as we head to Qatar. If indeed we head to Qatar, which I do believe we will. I think my positive takeaway was that age doesn't matter that much as people said it did, right? Going into CONCACAF qualifying, the narrative that I feel we were being fed by, you know, certain quarters was that you need to have experienced CONCACAF players as much as possible, because those of you who win in the Champions League, you just don't know how hard it is to go play in CONCACAF. And, you know, the best thing you can do is bring MLS vets who have CONCACAF experience. All of that narrative, I think, over these last 3 windows has been blown out of the water, and especially so in this camp. We had a 22-year-old lineup. You know, like I think the average age against Mexico was 22.5 or 23 or something, like very young. You know, our best players on the night were 21-year-old Tim Weah and 18-year-old Yunus Musa, right? Like this camp continued to demonstrate that talented players are greater than experienced players, and that if you are good enough, you are old enough. And I'm hoping that that continues to be the narrative going forward, because it was very, very evident to me, at least in this camp, that that is the case. That's not to say that young players can't be inconsistent, right? We saw a little bit of that against Jamaica, certainly. But even so, they're still better than some of the other options that we have. If the young players who are really talented are inconsistent, what does that say about the players who aren't consistently bad? You know what I mean? Like,
Pete, the thing that matters is one is how big is the talent gap between the experienced players and the older and the young ones. If it's very close, the talent gap, yes, the experienced guy is probably going to bring you more consistency. But if the gap is this big, then you got to go with the talent. And I mean, yeah, you're going to have a bumpy ride here and there, but it's better than just having a crappy ride the whole time, like the Panama game, for example. But yeah, it's all about how big the talent gap is between the young guy and the veteran. Yeah,
for sure. Okay, and now let's dig into, I guess, you know, the issues, because for every window, no matter how positive, there are still, I don't want to call them negatives, but issues and things that we can improve on, things that we can be better. Meg, I feel like we're catching you in a good Wi-Fi moment. Let's see if we can get you first.
Fingers crossed. I would say, I know you asked for one, but I mean, consistency and set pieces. Traditionally, we've been really strong on set pieces, and we've yet to score off a set piece in World Cup qualifying, I believe. And I think that that's an area of concern. You know, where especially certain players are doing a good job of creating set piece opportunities, but we're not capitalizing on that. And I think that's definitely something for this team to take a look at and try to address, because we'd be winning games by bigger margins or changing the scoreline if we did and could capitalize on that. So set pieces, I would say.
Yeah, so attacking set pieces. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on defending set pieces, because we saw against Panama a very interesting defensive setup, and then against Jamaica, again, we didn't concede. We got the luck of the referee, you know, but it seems like that's still maybe a weakness that we didn't think we had before, is conceding set piece opportunities.
I would agree with that too. In both directions, actually. I think that whereas previously we've been really strong on both attacking and defending set pieces, there's been some concerning patterns flourishing around both directions of the set pieces. I mean, that goal was interesting. You know, you do wonder if that call would stand if VAR was in the match. Personally, I think we got lucky. I don't think that stands if we have VAR. Walker Zimmerman, after the match, he was saying, I got pushed in the back. I think it's a foul. That's what he was saying. He said it doesn't usually get called. That's what he said. It doesn't usually get called, but I think it's a foul. I did get pushed in the back, is what he said.
Right.
I don't think that stands in VAR, and I think we got lucky there. And so, yeah, I would say in both directions, both defending from Panama to the Jamaica game as well as attacking, there's concerns on the set piece.
Yeah, for sure. And it's an interesting one because how differently do we feel right now if the referee lets that goal stand? If we take a loss in Jamaica, how mad are we right now? You know what I mean? Like, does our performance fundamentally change? No, right? But we take the point and we go, okay, phew. And I think that's an interesting dichotomy always as a fan between result and performance. You know, a decent or half decent result can cover up a bad performance and vice versa. And so I think if we lose that in Jamaica, we're questioning a lot more what Gregg is doing. You know what I mean? So I just think it's interesting how that one moment can really change narratives. Tack, what is your issue or takeaway?
The roster. The roster was an issue, and we unfortunately we didn't see the issue. So this is the thing: the roster had probably, okay, don't quote me on this, could be wrong. I'm just saying on the top of my head, 15 good players. Okay, so that means you have a good starting 11 and good 3 to 4 players off the bench, which is fine.
Yeah.
And against Mexico, we had everyone available, so the starting 11 was good, and we had good options off the bench. Pulisic coming in, and even if we needed, Busio was still an option off the bench. Unfortunately, Scally didn't dress for that game for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But you have the options. And then we go into the second game where players will be more tired. They had just played. They're traveling. We lost Weston, which is a key player. We lost Miles Robinson. That's also a key player. Even though Miles, the replacement was fine. Chris Richards held his own just as well, if not even better. And Zimmerman was fine as well. But then let's go to the midfield. Here's the issue. We don't bring any center forwards in the roster. Before I talk about the midfield, no center forwards besides Ricardo Pepe, at least a true one, right?
Yeah.
Ferreira can play there if you need, yeah, but you have a national team in your hands, so you have all these center forward options. And if we're going to go to form, I don't think, like Pete has said before, I'm not the biggest fan of Daryl DK, but he's still a center forward scoring goals in MLS, and he is an actual center forward that will body players, can play against Jamaica. So that is one. The midfield, we lose Weston. He does the right thing and replaces him with Busio. Busio has an game, not as bad as some people try to portray, but it wasn't a good game from Gianluca Busio. And then the other options you have on the bench for the central midfield are Leggett, Acosta, and I guess Roldan could play there, but sometimes at the wing as well. Roldan kind of plays wherever Gregg wants him to. So all of a sudden, the only option he had was, and Yunus Musa had a strep throat, so he had to replace him eventually in the game. You put in Acosta, a midfield with Tyler Adams and Acosta at the 6, just doesn't work, right? And we had to deal with that again. And then you have a 19 Busio. And then for the wing, because you only had Pulisic as a winger on the bench and Areola, you put in Christian Pulisic. Brendan gasses out or gets injured or tries to get murdered by Chaka Rodriguez in the middle of the game. We saw that happen too. At the end of the day, you have to put Paul Areola. So again, when someone says that, oh, he's just a depth piece in the roster, it's just BS. You need every single position needs to matter. We need to have options off the bench. So yes, we had enough players to have a good starting 11, but when it came to depth, we didn't have it, but not because we don't have depth, but because of the players Gregg chose. So that has to be said.
Yeah, certainly does. Yeah, it's something I feel like I've harped on for a long time but especially with, the argument that young players can be inconsistent, which is true, then it's even more important that you have quality depth so that if there is inconsistencies, look at Ricardo Pepi. We all love the kid. Maybe not his best camp. I don't think he was as bad as some people are saying, but not his best camp. You need to have solutions on the bench, you know what I mean? And real solutions that can play there. So I just think there's a lot of, 100% agree with you, Tack. The roster is still very much an issue. Marcus.
I'm going to piggyback, but just a slight variation on that. Burhalter as a coach has been strong defensively and struggled with goal scoring. This unit for 3 years now has struggled with goal scoring. Looking specifically at that side of the ball, he brought 2 MLS players whose seasons are finished and will not start again and be in a competitive match until World Cup qualifying is complete. So even if this whole phased out thing is theory, why would you not bring a European-based or at least a playoff striker like Daryl DK or somebody that will at least have some more competitive game experience coming into January? So even if you said I brought the best unit now, you have to be forward-thinking. You have 6 more games. We're under a tight pressure. You've got to bring players that are going to have in-game experience closer than 3 months in some cases this next window, and the following window even longer. So that, to me, you have not shown to be able to create goal scoring chances consistently. How can you not, even if you are planning to phase out a couple of these players and we're never intending to use them, not bring guys that could fill in? I think of Gio Aquini. You know, he could have filled in as a winger or striker and been in camp, gotten some experience there. DK is another one, just to bring along, even if you're planning for the long term and not planning to use them. This would have been a great camp to bring them in, get that experience again, get that locker room camaraderie with the core group. And then next window, you can start to phase out some of the guys that aren't playing. So that, for me, the not long-term planning, as well as the current roster, not thinking about the next 2 windows, next 6 games, where several of our roster will not have played in months, is a little scary to me. When I'm told Burhalter is such an analytical thinker and queuing up things, that to me was a red flag for me this window.
Yeah, the lack of foresight, I think, has been a problem throughout all the windows. I mean, remember when he brought the roster that was too small in the first window, and then a bunch of people got injured or, you know, got suspensions, or Weston was sent home, Gio got injured, and then we just didn't have enough coverage. It's been an issue throughout qualifying. But I think you're right, the lack of foresight. I think for me, the issue, it's not a big one, but I think it's something we have to be thinking about going forward, is that we lack variance in our point of attack. And what I mean by that is if you look at the last 6-7 goals that we've scored in World Cup qualifying, right? Against Costa Rica, the first goal is a Serginho Dest cross. Oh, Jamaica, I'm sorry. Serginho Dest cross to Ricardo Pepi. And then a Brendan Aronson cross to Pepi for the second goal, right? At home against Jamaica, it's Dest cutting in from the wing and scoring a sweet, sweet goal, right? And then, you know, the second goal is Dest to Weah, you know, in the half space, in sort of a wide area. And then again against Mexico, it's a way across to Pulisic in the first goal. The second goal is, you know, starts with Tim Weah bringing it inside for, you know, Weston. And that's great, right? You've heard Gregg talk about how he wants his midfielders to progress the ball and then get it wide, where overlapping fullbacks can create overloads with our wingers and we can put crosses in. And there's nothing wrong with that. I love that. It's clearly been successful, right? And it's clearly where we've gotten the majority of our goals from. My only issue with it is that it makes us predictable, and good teams are able to vary their point of attack and hurt you in different ways, right? And I think that if you look at the player pool that we have, we should be able to have a variance, and specifically, we should be able to break down low blocks. I think that was an area against Jamaica where we suffered. You know, when they did retreat into a low block, we struggled to break them down. And part of that is due to, you know, Gio Reyna is a guy who can do that. He's been injured. We don't know if Gregg will give him an opportunity to play central. Or even having a guy like Luca De La Torre, who I don't think should start, but I do think having him as a option will vary how we can break teams down. Specifically,
Mihailovic.
Sorry?
Mihailovic, P2.
Georgi Mihailovic is somebody we could probably look at. But, you know, it's just, I love the MMA midfield, and I was clamoring for it, right? And I think that should be, you know, certainly one of our options going forward, but it shouldn't be our only one. Both Musa and Weston McKennie are guys who are fantastic driving at you with the ball at their feet. Neither of them is consistently going to make line-breaking passes to cut open a midfield, to pick a lock. It's just not who they are. They're very effective at what they do, but I do think we need to add some variance to our attack, because not only in CONCACAF, if you go to a World Cup looking predictable, I mean, the scouting reports that they will have on our team, the opponents, will be, you know, so detailed and specific, and good teams can find a way to shut you down if you really have one point of attack, and that is coming in from, you know, putting crosses in from wide areas. So it's not a big deal, right? And it's just something I think we need to build on. I think we have a good strategy right now. It can't be our only strategy. And to build on that, just the fact that we use the 4-3-3 as almost exclusively is a little worrying to me. I know that Gregg has experimented with back three in the past, but the way he played it, it's never really worked. Most coaches in the world have at least one formation that is a backup formation that you can use against different types of opponents, that you can use in different game states. And the fact that we've never experimented with a 4-2-3-1 or a 3-5-2 is a little worrying to me, because our backup formation appears to be a 3-4-2-1, and almost every time we've tried it, it hasn't gone well. You know, so then it feels like Gregg has then retreated to, okay, the 4-3-3 has worked and is solid. And that's probably true to a degree. But again, the lack of variance, the lack of, we're going to pull something different out of the hat to, you know, to break down this opponent or this style is a little worrying to me, because we're going to need more than one formation that works going into Qatar, if indeed we, you know, go, which, like I said, I think we will. But that, I think, just, you know, variety in how we attack teams and how we play needs to be something that we can have going forward, you know. You know, the next question I wanted to talk about was really the solution to the, you know, the issues that we just discussed. I feel like I kind of gave my solutions, you know, in my issues. Meg, you talked about us being poor, you know, from set pieces perspective. Why do you think that is, and what do you think the solution is going forward?
I think it's finding the right people to be in charge of taking those set pieces offensively. I don't know that we've settled that entirely. I think defensively, it's similar. I mean, we have a lot of shifting personnel, and it could just be a matter of people finding a rhythm for where everybody else is positionally. And I think the solution, I mean, Gregg loves his video, and I think that one of the positives of Gregg as a coach is he's very communicative. So he, you know, he can be overly elaborate, but I do think that he does a good job of communicating with all of the players when they're away with their club, when they're not in camp with the team. And I think we've got our coaching identify where we're strong and where we're weak, and get those videos and input out to the players when they're away. I trust that that's what's going to happen, and I think that we've got some time to mull that over.
Do you think that literally not having Gio Reyna for almost the entire qualifying window, and having a Pulisic who's been, you know, in and out with injuries and COVID and whatnot, has affected that? Because I feel like those are our two best set piece takers.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a huge
Oh, it looks like we lost Meg.
Oh, no.
Jamaica.
They're out to get us.
When Pulisic was back on the field, you felt the impact. How spotty am I?
We just get you to start again on that one, Meg. I think we lost the majority of it.
Yeah, man.
Why don't we go?
Yeah,
okay,
I would
Meg,
say that it makes a huge difference. And I think
sorry, Meg. I'm sorry
you can
to cut you off.
tell.
Meg, we're still getting a lot of up and down from you. Why don't we go to TAC, and then maybe we'll get a better Wi-Fi moment, and then we can go back to Meg on that. Filippo, go ahead.
Yeah, just like Jamaica just got a new coach, I think. I think they fired their coach. But
they did? Wait, they fired Whitmore?
I heard Tapa Whitmore was fired finally.
Interesting.
Wait, but remember, they've been known for twisting the truth a lot. So let's wait for the confirmation. But apparently Tapa Whitmore is out, just like Meg's Wi-Fi. But so you were talking about what can be done to improve the roster selection. I mean, it's just Gregg improving the roster selection, right? I do think he will improve it on the next window because of the lack of minutes of certain players. Since they got no minutes, even when we needed, I'm assuming he's willing to try other options. So there's no secret recipe for it. It's just seeing I think Gregg needs to believe in some players that just don't have youth. And one thing that could help as well is hopefully some of these guys start maybe to pick up good form for their clubs. Some of them get more minutes for their clubs. And one thing to leave on a positive note here, we had less than a month between the camps. Now we have 2 months. So for young guys, this period can help them adjust to their clubs. I think it's more positive for the guys abroad. And also, I think MLS will be out. I don't know how that will affect the selection of certain players, even though there are MLS players that are key to the roster, and we need to see how that's going to be impacted.
Yeah. Yeah. Meg, we seem to have you now. Can we go back to you there? Because you're in a good Wi-Fi place.
Don't jinx it. Yeah, sorry about that, everybody. To answer your question, I think it makes a huge difference not having Gio or players like that. You can tell, the minute Pulisic was back on the field, the difference. First of all, players were speaking to the difference he had in camp generally. I think having those players adds energy and inspiration to the team atmosphere, even off the field. But players, I would say Pulisic, Weston McKennie is another one. You really feel the difference across the board when they're on the field and when they're not. And Gio, I think, is really one of them. And we know that he's really strong on a set piece. So I think not having him there makes a big difference. But I think similar to the point you were making earlier, Pete, we don't want to only ever have one player for reasons exactly like this last few windows that's capable of really securing us a successful set piece opportunity. So we really do need to find other people who can do it and not rely on the difference that Gio would make there.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Marcus.
Yeah, so I mean, I think just kind of piggybacking on what everybody has said, the roster selection, we've got guys like Matthew Hoppe, Gioacchini, DK, Christian and Reyna being back and healthy. I think that would make a extreme difference on the attacking side of the ball. Centrally, Luca, Busio now starting to get integrated, and we're finally, 4 games in, seeing MMA, which we've been screaming for since November, dying to see that trio, and it showed to be the quality. We're always going to have injuries. So I would hope that Gregg, might use this December, January window, look at like what's his name, Sonora down in South America, see if there are some other young players centrally, add some depth there. Clearly, to Filippo's point, Legit has shown, and, others have shown not to be the solution. So this is a great window and 2 months till the next one to explore, get some familiarity with some young players. It's a huge opportunity for Gregg, and hopefully he'll take it. So that to me is the solution. Find the solution. Yeah. We know what doesn't work.
Yes. I feel like I gave my, solutions already in my little lecture. Let's answer the question, if you can, in just a sentence or two, maybe 3 max. Is Gregg Berhalter evolving? Meg?
Yeah, I do. I think that he is figuring out what players belong and don't belong on the field at this level. I think he's also putting the right combinations of players together on the field. I wouldn't say entirely he's learned all his lessons. There's still some frustrations. And as we've been saying, who's getting called into camp to begin with, and then who is getting those minutes. I think there's some learning still to be done there. But I think in terms of tactics as well as lineup, I think he did well this window.
Yeah. Tack?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily use the word of evolving, right? I think all of us, we always improve in life. Well, for the most part, right? Some people, we've seen actually Gregg go down sometimes. But yeah, he's been better. And we're very critical of him. And it almost seems like we're being too nice to him at times. The roster was pretty bad overall, in my opinion. A lot of it shouldn't have been the way it was. The starting 11, I really don't have much to complain about. I wish Scally had gotten some minutes to be integrated with the team at this point, so that next camp, there's no more of that excuses. Regardless, he was brought in. So is he evolving? I wouldn't say evolving, but there were some improvements this camp for sure. But we still had the inconsistent. What I want to see from Gregg's team, right? Because the U.S. men's national team is Gregg's team. He's the leader. He's the guy in charge. I want to start seeing consistency now. We showed in a few games we can perform at a high level, but we haven't done that for not even a bare minimum of 2 games in a row. Can we see maybe 3 games where we're like, even if we don't win all 3 games, that is fine. You could maybe win 2 and get unlucky with 1. Bayern loses, Liverpool loses, Manchester City loses, but see good performances in a row. So we played very well against Mexico. We were terrible against Jamaica, not good at all, especially after the Jamaica goal. After the Jamaica goal, we were not good in that game. Last camp, we were good against Jamaica. We were one of the worst performances I've ever seen from the United States against Panama, probably the worst one under Gregg for sure. And then we were good against Costa Rica with some inconsistency. So I want to see, if I want to say he evolved or really improved, I want to see our team be more consistent. I understand that we're young, so that is tougher than normal. But I think we could lose games and still play well. And against Jamaica, it just seemed a little off. It didn't seem like the same team that Dos a Cero their way through Mexico a few days before.
Can we just briefly talk about that game? Because I feel like we didn't really cover it in detail. And I think it's important to do that. The lineup comes out. We're celebrating, right? Because we're like, this is 2 times in a row now that Gregg has given what we all feel is the best lineup, or close to the best lineup at least. And then the game starts, and we start okay. But there was definitely issues in that game, and we didn't play as well as we did against Mexico. Whew. And we tried to make sense of it, right? In the post-game, you and I, me and Tack, and I'm sure a lot of people tried to make sense of it. What do you guys think really were the issues? And I'm sure it's not just one, but Meg, you're looking good now with the Wi-Fi. And Marcus, we'll come back to your – I want to talk about that because you brought it up. Go ahead, Meg.
I think that there were individual performances in that Jamaica game that were really subpar and disappointing from people who should be performing better. I think there were players who were tired. I mean, one thing I didn't mention before, I was surprised by the substitutions and who came out, but then in the post-match, it was revealed that Musa had strep throat, which probably impacted some of his play, even though I don't think he didn't do well. And so that's why he came out. And then Timothy Weah said that he was tired, even though obviously he had that first goal, which was a real beauty. So I think that there were some individual performances where it just wasn't their night. For whatever reason, we really struggle away in particular, and with consistency away, like you said. And I wonder, it's a mentality thing. I think some of that is the players. I think some of that could be the coaching staff. I mean, to have, and they spoke to this in the post-match, but to have that level of intensity and heart and investment in one match, and then to be completely kind of just going down a hill there in terms of the energy you're bringing to the second match is interesting. There weren't that many fans there. At a certain point in the game in Jamaica, the U.S. traveling fans were louder than the Jamaica fans. So I wouldn't say that, I mean, if anything, it was a non-exciting atmosphere, but like Tyler Adams said in the post-match, they played through COVID without stadiums full of fans there. It's not like that's never happened before.
Right.
So it's a bit of a confusing, confounding performance. And I think it's a combination of things. It's energy, it's mentality, it's the coaching staff bringing that energy and inspiring the team to bring that energy to the game, and then some individual performances that just really weren't there. And the last thing I'll say, I know I'm getting a bit long-winded here, is that Michael Antonio goal changed everything. I mean, that took the air out of the stadium. It took the air out of the team. It lit a fire behind the Jamaican team. And I think that shifted the entire trajectory of the game, and we never really recovered after that.
Yeah. Marcus, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think the goal changed a lot of the culture of that game, of where we were. I thought Brendan Aronson and Antony struggled, and it really disrupted. And then obviously centrally, Musa just wasn't as sharp. I mean, he wasn't really turning the ball over much, but his speed, his pace wasn't there. Busio seemed, a little more timid. I think he grew into the game, but early on that rhythm just wasn't there. And then Musa was out by the time Busio was kind of, getting informed. So it was like we never got the rhythm right. And I think that was what, the tone was set in the Mexico game. And then we just didn't have an impact sub to bring in. You look at Nations League final when Weah came on, I feel like he lifted that whole team, just with his pace and what he brought to the table, and the whole dynamic of that game shifted there.
Yeah.
As we looked at the bench, we didn't have an impact sub to bring in. I know Pulisic was there, but he wasn't fully himself. Obviously had a huge moment, in the Mexico game, but like he didn't have that lift to the squad that was there, and Pepe just wasn't sharp, consistently. I remember Weah putting that cross, and Pepe just cracked it right into a Jamaican defender, unfortunately, and Brendan tried to sneak it in the top corner.
Yeah.
And it was saved. Like I just don't think we had rhythm and a couple individual performances. And then again, back to, I hate to beat that drum, but not having that impact sub to bring in
Yeah.
That would bring something different. You know, a Conrad, I think Gioacchini. You know, if there was somebody there that we could have brought in that might have made a difference, you know, might have been the difference in the game. It just wasn't there.
Yeah, for sure. Tack.
Yeah, I think actually thinking about it the past 2 days, I think it's actually very simple. Very obvious. The problems. One, it was already mentioned. We do have depth with the U.S. men's national team, but the roster didn't have it. The only impact player we really had off the bench for this game that we obviously different guys can come in and have an impact, but Pulisic is the only one that we really had off the bench. Like, okay, this guy can come in and change, and it's not even a fully fit Pulisic yet, right?
Yeah.
Conrad has been coming off the bench for Marseille, and we know there's a lot of issues with his game still, but he always seems to spark up the game when he comes in. It's a difference maker, right? Mihailovic, with his more incisive passing and assist, could have been an option. Luca De La Torre could have been an option. There were options. I understand Hoppy is injured according to reports, whether we believe that or not. He's injured, so yeah, it wouldn't have been an option. DK, he is a different player when it comes to Pepe. He'll bring that physicality. So depth was a problem. The other problem was Gregg doesn't really have tactical variations that work effectively. So he changed the press that worked against Mexico. We had a very high block against Mexico, very high line of pressing. And he changed it against Jamaica, and it didn't work, right? It didn't work. They were able to get the ball to Antonio a few times. And the one time we gave Antonio time and space, he scored that golazo. And there you go. It seems like every time Gregg tries to shake up the tactics, it doesn't work for whatever reason. Could be for not having enough time with the players. Could be that he doesn't know a different way. Those are the issues. It was the selection of how we were going to face Jamaica and not having game-changing pieces off the bench. Not because we don't actually have them, but because of the roster selection.
Yeah. So I'm not going to build on it. You guys covered it. I think that was, you all got it spot on. Marcus, we were actually on you talking about it. Gregg Berhalter has evolved. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think he has. I think, we saw that in the starting lineups probably more than anything. I think early on in the window, what was it Honduras, where he just like threw mud at the wall, like he had no clue what he was doing. I feel like even though we lost to Jamaica, he at least put out the lineup that he wanted. He got the tactics wrong, but he seemed more confident. Like he had a plan and he stuck to his plan. I think he got the roster wrong. I think there are problems with what he did, but I feel like he has at least built some sort of confidence and plan. And I think it needs to, work is still needed to be done. But I think he has changed from that first window, from that perspective.
Yeah, I agree. Guys, let's look forward. I mean, we have 6 games left in this qualifying window, for World Cup qualifying. We are second in the table, 1 point above that 4th playoff spot. And I'm not going to lie, it's going to make for a nervy holiday season for a lot of USMNT fans. I have several thoughts on this. Maybe I'll start. We have 3 home games left, and those 3 home games are against Honduras, El Salvador, and Panama. That should be 9 points without question. I mean, I know Panama's doing well these days, but Panama has also had an easier stretch of games than some, and they're going to be going into a rough stretch. Mexico also has had their roughest, games, except they still have to face us at home. And they still have to go to Jamaica, most notably without Chucky Lozano, who got yellow in the Canada game, I believe, and is now banned for that game. Somebody correct me. Am I wrong about that? I think he is banned.
He did get a yellow. I don't know if he had one prior, but he did get a yellow.
I'll look that up and I'll clarify. But maybe it's just me. I'm worried that there's no margin for error now, and that Gregg trying to be too cute in 1 or 2 games could put us very quickly into a path. We still have to go to Canada away. We still have to go to, Mexico away. And we still have to go to Costa Rica away, which although they, have struggled, that's still a tough place to go. So I want to believe if we get 9 points at home, we'll be fine in terms of qualifying. But the fact is, we should be first in the CONCACAF. In CONCACAF, we have the most talented and the deepest player pool by a fairly wide margin. And the fact that we are 1 point ahead of Panama after having played 8 games is really a concern to me, especially because so many of those wounds have been self-inflicted, and it's just like, I want to really answer the question about Gregg Berhalter evolving. I want to believe he is. I still think it's too early to say. I have this nightmare where, all these guys that we, are trying to move off the roster get called in for the Bosnia game, and we end up playing Bosnia's C team. They're not motivated really to play. They're just here to show up. And, Paul Arriola gets a hat trick. And now Gregg is like, hey, so it's like, I want to believe that he's evolving, but I'm still like, I think it's too early to say. I have worries that he might not be, or that he still might be like, oh, these guys are just in bad form right now, which is why I didn't use them. But once they've all had a nice break, maybe it'll be different next year. So looking forward, I think if we get those 9 points at home, we'll be okay. And then everything else is kind of a quote unquote bonus, but we should at least get a draw in Mexico and Canada. And even Costa Rica, I think we should expect to win. I mean, I don't think this whole idea of, win at home, draw away is good enough for us anymore. That might have been okay when our rosters were still, plucky athletes, but our rosters aren't that anymore. I mean, we forget that we have top guys starting regularly at Barcelona, Juventus, Dortmund, Leipzig, Lille. There's so many. It's no longer okay to just be satisfied with win at home, draw away. And I think we will qualify. I think we will. Of course, I have my insecurities in the back of my head that are like, what if, but I think we'll be okay, especially because we've been so strong at home. What do you guys think, Meg?
Yeah, I feel reservedly positive, I'll say, about whether or not we'll qualify. But I think that it's like you indicated, it's not so much whether we qualify, it's how we qualify.
Yeah.
So I have concerns about how we qualify. But that being said, I don't think it's in the bag. I think that you're correct. There's not much of a margin for error. I think those top 4 teams are very close. And we could fall anywhere in the top 3, or I don't think we'll come fourth, but it's not impossible either. Panama's not so far off.
No.
I like you said, I think that the next window is going to be a really important one. The last thing we want is to head into the last window needing points in Costa Rica and in Mexico. And I think that's preventable, but we need 3 points from both of the home games in the next window, and at least a point in Canada. So I think the margin for error is small. We need to win the home games, and the next window is going to show us a lot, and hopefully we don't have any big curveballs there.
Yeah. Tack?
Yeah, next window we play El Salvador at home and Honduras at home. Anything less than 3 points in each of those games is unacceptable and worrisome, right? If we don't get 3 points in all of those games, 6 points right away, right there from the get-go, it's very worrisome because of the games we have left and the fact that what people need to realize is 4th place is very, very dangerous. You could be facing a Colombia, a Uruguay. Who knows? And I think people don't realize these are teams that are the same level in, honestly, maybe better than the US, Mexico, and Canada. So, and you might have to play them away. And just imagine, if you don't like CONCACAF, you're not going to like CONMEBOL even better. It's way worse, trust me. So we need to be careful with that. We can't finish 4th. We need to hold on to the top 3. We are somewhat comfortable in the top 4 right now, 6 points ahead of Costa Rica. That's somewhat comfortable, to be fair. But we're not comfortable on the top 3. The 4th is right there. We could finish 4th on next game if we don't win. Could be 4th. So, yeah, we do need to win those 2 games. And Canada, we understand how well coached they are, how they're playing well, and they have good players, and we're going to play them away. But we shouldn't accept a loss. To a bare minimum, tie Canada away. That one is, if we win the 2 home games, that draw is not bad. But ideally, get 9 points on that camp, get on the last camp pretty much qualified, if not already qualified, theoretically, because the last camp is going to be dangerous. And remember, Costa Rica is the 5th place team. If we're going to face them away, if we keep them alive, we might have to go play Costa Rica away for the result or a draw, and I don't want to be in that situation.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's interesting you bring up Canada and John Herdman and the way they've been coached. Anytime somebody tells me that Gregg Berhalter needs more time or that, this group needs more time to gel, I'd say, like, dude, he's been in charge for 3 years. John Herdman has been in charge of Canada for just over I think it's been less time, 2 years, but he's got Canada playing to their strengths. Everybody looks like they understand their roles. You know, he's got them playing greater than the sum of their parts. And I think that is what you expect from your coach. You want the team looking better than the players that has available. So, yeah, I think Canada's leading the way in terms of that, although some of their recent fan/media remarks have me really hoping we get that win up in Canada, because anytime you mention customs in a rant about soccer, I can't take you seriously anymore. I mean, it's just like, what is going on? But I'm getting off the point. Marcus.
Yeah, I think this next window is critical. You know, Canada does have 2 away games, you know, with us sandwiched in the middle. If it's across the bridge, you know, close, like we could make that a semi home game, you know, depending on the size of the stadium and how tickets go. We could make that a very competitive home game, albeit in winter, you know, and it being pretty cold. Panama's got 2 road games at Costa Rica and at Mexico, sandwiched around Jamaica. Like, they don't have the depth to play around with that Jamaican home game if they want to make a go of sticking around and staying competitive. So it's going to be really interesting how they play. I think they could slide a little bit this next window, and I could see Canada stumbling a bit, you know, just having the 2 away games and us in the middle of it. Like, it's just going to be tough calculus for them. Is the seasons, right? Like, there's a lot of these teams that rely on MLS players. You know, this could be end of January, end of February. Like, is that going to impact their depth, their sharpness against each other? Like, this may level out a bit, you know, these next windows as some of these teams' seasons are finishing. Domestic leagues, the MLS, USL reliant teams are 6 months or 6-8 weeks from having played a competitive match, where we have a heavy European base. Liga MX, you know, is still going. You know, it could be really interesting there. And the other one I want to say is on the Panama home game. That's right behind at Mexico. I would expect several yellow cards in that game for the U.S. So, you know, depending on who's on a yellow going into that game, we may lose them for the home game. And Adams, McKennie might pick up another one next window, you know. I mean,
he's clear now, right? He can get 1 yellow. It's if he gets a second yellow.
But I'm saying if he gets 1 that game and gets the second in the Mexico game and he's out at home against Panama, like, I would expect to be missing 3 or 4 guys in that Panama game based off of a second yellow against Mexico. So that could impact, you know, who we're putting out on the field against Panama at home. So, and then Costa Rica, even being eliminated, you know, those guys are proud guys. You know, they have fought us for years, for an entire generation, like, to knock us out or screw us up in their last game, regardless of whether they have a shot themselves.
Yeah.
You know, they're gonna take great joy and pleasure, just like Trinidad did, in having an impact on the standings. So I wouldn't count them out, even if they're out.
Great. Guys, I think this has been an awesome discussion. Thank you to every single one of you who has showed up and given your thoughts. Guys, just quickly on Marcus, I know he hasn't been here before. He has a great site called chasingacup.com. It's there in his little box. You can see it. But he gets a lot of really good writers. Is that right? And
yes,
they all contribute really good content. So you definitely please check his site out. Marcus, I'd love to have you back on the show at some point to talk about your other project where you're basically getting soccer for refugees in the area which you live in Kentucky. Is that right?
Yeah, I would love to come back, man, and tell you about it. I'm excited.
Yeah, there's so many people in American soccer who are not part of the administration of it, but who are doing great things at the grassroots level. And I want to talk about that more on my channel. Meg, you started a new YouTube channel recently, I saw.
We lost Meg.
I think we lost
Meg.
But Filippo also has a good channel, I hear. So I will put all of these guys' where do people find you, Marcus? Is Twitter the best place? Is it
Twitter's perfect. Twitter's perfect. Send them to the website. Yeah, either one.
What's your handle on Twitter?
At Chasing a Cup.
At Chasing a Cup. Tax channel will be in the description. I think we've lost Meg finally to the Jamaican wilderness, but I will say she just started a new channel as well. I'm going to put the link to that in the descriptions. She's going to do some very interesting interviews. I believe she has an interview with Marcus coming up.
She does tonight.
Oh, tonight.
I don't know when she'll post it. Yeah, I don't know when she'll post it or if it'll be live, but yeah, tonight we're talking.
Awesome. So check both of them out. They all do good work. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll talk to you soon.